Let's do it.
Yep. All right. Hey, everybody. I am super excited for today. I'm excited for all of you joining us live, asking your questions. I'm excited for you who get to listen to it later on the podcast players. So I know this is not our usual day and time, but I have an opportunity to interview a very special guest, and I wasn't going to pass this up. And I was just telling him offline, this is someone that I have followed, maybe stalked, for the last 15 years easily, Dave Asprey. And if you don't know who he is, you are going to follow him on every channel when we're done. Let me tell you just a little bit about him. So first of all, Dave is the founder of the biohacking movement. He is the one who created all of this. So all these people that you see after, like, this is the OG guy who really got it going, and we'll dig into this, but it's really the science of longevity and human optimization. So he's the founder of Bulletproof Coffee, which I still drink today. He's a 4 times New York Times bestselling author. He's got the #1 rated podcast out there. Most recently, I think, Recent Ventures Upgrade Labs, which we will talk about. And can't wait to find out about this. He lost, I think it was about 100 pounds. And that might have changed it, or even been more.
It was 100 pounds. Yep.
100 pounds. And he's upped his IQ. So we're going to dig in with that. Dave, thank you so much for being here. I would love to start out with just a little bit of your story so that people get context as we dig into the science and the experience that you've had.
Sure. In my 20s, I had hit 300 pounds.
Wow.
I was diagnosed with arthritis when I was 14 in my knees. I've had 3 knee surgeries before I was 23. I had strep throat or sinus infections every month for about 15 years, was on antibiotics all the time. High risk of stroke and heart attack, pre-diabetes before I was 30. And chronic fatigue syndrome, just terrible brain fog. Couldn't remember anything. And my career in Silicon Valley was taking off, and I was totally faking it and just hanging on by a thread and just doing my best. And I wouldn't even remember kind of how I got home most days. So I went to the doctor, and he said, well, maybe you try to lose weight. I'm like, well, I went to the gym for 18 months, 6 days a week, 90 minutes a day on a low fat, like semi-vegetarian diet. Could you offer me some suggestions on how to lose weight? And he said, you should eat healthy. And I looked at him, I said, why isn't it working for you? Because you're fat. Right. And he said, I just don't follow my own advice. This is how it always happens.
Yeah.
Right? So you could tell he really believed I was just eating Snickers bars and I was just lying to his face. And they can train you that in medical school. Just to say, look, if someone has all these different symptoms, it's probably they're crazy. It's like, no, they probably have a low level problem with their biology is what's going on. Yeah. So I just decided one day, I was a tech executive, a computer hacker, actually. So I said, if I can hack the internet, how hard could it be? I'm going to have to do this. So every night I would just study for 4 hours and fall asleep at my desk learning about biology and mitochondria because I knew my energy was off. I just couldn't bring it. So I started in the 90s when the heyday of mitochondrial awareness just started. I started doing the research. Pretty soon I'm running a longevity nonprofit group, and there's people in their 80s teaching me how they're staying young, and I'm in my 20s. I'm like the only guy under 60
wow.
in the room. And so a lot of the biohacking was handed to me by our elders. These are people who had more energy than I did. And I was a third their age. So I'm like, if they can do it, maybe I can do it. And it turns out I wrote a blog because I thought I would help 5 people. And it turns out more than 5 people were interested. But my goal was I just wanted 5 people to not suffer as much as I did. Mm-hmm. I spent $2 million getting well and then upgrading my biology, reversing my age and all of that. I spent it over 20 years though. The $2 million a year thing, that's a little outside my budget, but $100,000 a year was quite a stretch. And I couldn't have afforded that in my 20s or early 30s for sure. But I did spend about 20% of my disposable income on just maintaining my brain so that I could think. I mean, I was desperate. People probably wouldn't understand that, just the level of anxiety where you're like, I'm pushing the accelerator pedal all the way to the floor and the car's slowing down. You can push harder, but it doesn't do anything. Right? So willpower is not the thing if you can't lose weight or your brain doesn't work or you're dealing with emotions that are just all over the place. It's biological and it's something you can change. And that's where biohacking came from.
So a couple of things there. First of all, I just wanted to tell you, I went to, this was years ago now, but I went to the doctor and I was like, I'm exhausted all the time. I can't sleep. And even if I sleep 12 hours, right, I wake up and I'm white knuckling through life. And I'll never forget, Dave, because the doctor said to me, well, you have 2 young kids, you have your own business, right? You have a life, like you're
Mhm.
exhausted because you're doing a lot. You need to scale it back. And I remember leaving the office thinking to myself, that can't be right. I didn't have an answer, but that can't be right. And the number of stories, and I'm sure you hear way millions more than I do, from friends who say, well, I'm really tired, but I've got a lot going on. And it seems like a cop out of the world to just be like, meh, that's how it
Ooh.
is, right?
It, it's true that you can have too much going on. It's also true that if you have a lot going on, you can change your capacity to manage what's
Mm,
going on so that you can handle it. There is usually an upper limit, at least I've found that there is one. You can handle way more than you'd ever think for short periods of time. But if you do what I did building my career, I didn't mention the other part of the story. I made $6 million when I was 26. And I lost $6 million when I was 28. So there you go. But I was burning the candle at both ends and in the middle, and I had toxic mold poisoning and a bunch of other stuff
mm,
going on. Like I needed to slow down to recover, and I was instead accelerating. So if you burn the candle at both ends really briefly, you can get something amazing done, right? And then you recover. But what we do as entrepreneurs is like you just never stop. There's
yeah.
always another thing on your to-do list. So it's the lack of recovery, but you have way more capacity than you think you do for a shorter period of time than you think you do.
Mm. So how do you manage, like, how do you think about managing your flow in that right way so that you're burning hot when you're supposed to or need to, but have the right time, I guess, to recover? Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah. Well, I'm profoundly lazy. Now, I know that that just triggered a bunch of people and now you don't like me or whatever, that's fine. But here's the thing. There was 2 farmers. One of them has a tractor and one of them pulls his own plow. Now, the one with the tractor is the lazy one. Okay, that's me.
Right.
Like I'm going to use the tools, right? And labor saving devices are actually something that I believe we have a moral and ethical obligation to use so that we
Mm,
have more energy to evolve ourselves or to be of service to other people or the planet. So don't waste your time on things that don't work very well. And that includes basic recovery technologies. So the way I do things today
yeah.
goes back about 15 years ago. I started buying all of the random pieces of equipment you would never even hear about: lasers, chambers, things to glue to your head. And I built the world's most advanced, we'll call it biohacking laboratory, but it had things that stimulate your brain, your muscles, your nerves, different systems in the body, and stimulate recovery. So you can recover
Mm,
faster than you're supposed to. And I launched this. It's now a company called Upgrade Labs. We have 28 locations and counting. We have AI deciding how you're going to recover. So what I do is when I push myself pretty hard, then I use things that make my body recover faster than just meditation.
mm,
Even my last book, Smarter Not Harder, it's about all sorts of things. Did you want muscles? Did you want cardiovascular? Did you want recovery? Did you want to manage stress? Do you want to be smarter? There's the old fashioned way. And then there's, oh, here's something new we discovered. And here's how you can do it in less time. For example, in the last 6 days, I flew from Austin to Washington, D.C. I was at a Financial Times conference on a big panel. I had dinner with family, left at 1 a.m. California time that night to get to LA, where I spent 3 days at the Milken conference. And I've been on 6 live podcasts in the last few days. And I came back at midnight last night. So sounds like an exhausting trip, right?
yeah. It's a lot.
It, it took me 7 hours of sleep to recover from that. I mean, that's a lot of sleep. Okay, now you can say, Dave, what are you talking about? Well, I might have had some lasers and some electrodes with me. I have a cold plunge in my backyard, as well as an infrared sauna, and I have all the technology from Upgrade Labs. So what's going on here is people are saying, I don't even understand half what you just said. That's okay. What I want you to know is you can meditate faster if you want to. You can sleep more in less time if you want to. You can lift more weights in less time. You actually don't have to lift the weights, but you can cause your muscles to grow faster. You can improve your cardiovascular system 6 times more than your spin class in the amount of time it takes you to brush your teeth. This is all validated by laboratory and research studies. This is not made up stuff. This is actually science fiction. It's happening right now. You just don't know about it because, well, you're supposed to go to the gym and you're supposed to run away from tigers, but now we can run away in place, which is our biggest innovation in like the last 5,000 years. It's insane.
So I love that. And I have a cold plunge and I do it almost every day. There are a couple days where I miss here and there during the week, and I love it. And I got it because I was finding that I had so much to do, and about 4 p.m. I was starting to fade, and I do CrossFit's my passion, but I was finding that as I've gotten older, my recovery has gotten harder, and I wanted to hack that. And so I guess my question to you is, what are aside from the health benefits, right? I think a lot of us look at this type of stuff and think, okay, I want to perform better at work. I want to be more active because I have kids. I don't know. I want to feel better because of, fill in the blank, right? There's an end benefit. So will you talk a little bit about how you see the end benefits play out in people's lives?
Sure.
I know that feeling good should be enough, but I don't know that it always is for people in truth.
There's no shoulds in here. I actually don't just want to feel good. I think that would be awful. I want to feel amazing. I want to feel joy. I want to feel peace, right? And I want to feel like I have enough energy to handle anything life brings me, and then I'm not going to lose my state. So it doesn't matter if it's, an earthquake or a tidal wave or, someone trolling me online. Zero effect on my nervous system. That's my goal. It's hard to do that, but
it's very hard.
What that comes from is partially reprogramming your triggers, and largely just from having enough energy. And what I believed when I was way more emotionally volatile in my 20s and my metabolism was off, I believed that if I was volatile or angry or anxious or tired or whatever, that it was kind of my fault. Like that it was something I chose to do. And if I'm having anxiety or stress, it's something around me causing it. The reality that's come out from all of my work, no, at least half and probably 70% of the stress people are experiencing today has nothing to do with their in-laws or the person who cut them off in traffic or their coworkers or, whatever.
That's just a trigger in the moment.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that your body is totally losing its mind because your cells are malnourished. Your cells are in a state of panic. They think there's a famine because they get a lot of junk food or because they're lacking minerals and fat-soluble vitamins. In fact, the cheapest and easiest thing you can do, you can go to vitamindake.com, and very affordable, the fat-soluble vitamins you need and the minerals that you need. If you do those two things, your body at least has the minerals in order to respond to stress. Because right now, if you pick up a dumbbell at the gym, and you're doing your thing, if you don't have enough minerals because you eat a lot of plant foods, or even if you are eating plant foods, they're out of minerals because our soil is depleted. So that means your body says, I sure would put on some muscle if I only had some zinc. I don't have any zinc. So how about some stress? And then the stress flows up into your brain and you go, it must be my mother-in-law. This is actually happening all the time because you're not supposed to know all of these secret systems inside the body. It's part of your operating system. It's supposed to just work. But when it doesn't have what it needs, it just feeds you anxiety. And the anxiety feels exactly the same as emotional stress. It's not. It's physical stress that feels like emotional stress. And when you make your body full of energy so your cells work again, like, look what my brain can do. Look, I can meditate. I can sleep. I remained calm at Christmas. All those things, they're so much easier. And when that much energy is left over, that's the energy that you use to evolve yourself and to grow. And then you remove the triggers. And that's been a huge part of my work as well is, how do I, instead of having the energy to manage triggers, I don't want them anymore. So I edit them out of reality. And that's one of the things I teach.
So what do you think? I'm so glad you got into stress because I see this all the time. And I've experienced it, of course. I'm not stress-free by any means. that people are living in a more stressed out state than I've seen in the last 20 years. And I think, I mean, I don't need to go back to the COVID years over and over again, but I think it started in 2020 and people are, have been resilient for so long. There's so much change. Things are accelerating. There's so much happening outside of our control. So, and some people seem to manage it well. And people always say, well, turn off the news, which I don't watch the news in the morning because it riles me up. I don't need it, but I'll find out something important later. Like it always comes to me if I need to know, but like, talk a little bit about that. Like, how do you in a daily life manage that fight, flight, or freeze that we seem to be living? And I think you kind of referred to it a second ago. I mean, that state is meant to be like, there's someone in the alley, a shadow, and I need to respond quickly. It's not meant to be how we live. But I don't know, from my perspective, it seems to be how we're living every day.
There are a lot of people living in that state. And it's interesting. The spike protein, wherever you got it, whether you had an infection or some other mechanism that puts it throughout your body, it directly affects mitochondria, which are the parts of your body that, well, we like to say they're the power plants of your cells, but that's not really how the body works. Mitochondria are ancient bacteria that fused with our cells a long time ago, and there's way more of them than there are cells in our body. What that means is they still act like bacteria. Bacteria are independent entities with their own intelligence. They're not very smart, but they're fast. So what do? They sit there like the ones in your liver or in your finger, and they look at as much of the world as they can sense. And they say, is it a stressful world? What time of day is it? Is it hot or cold? Is it light or dark?
They're like sensors.
They're sensors, exactly, environmental sensors. And then they're little computers. Hey, what do I do with this limited information I have? And there's a few things they can do. And then they can manufacture things based on what they decide to do. They can make inflammation. They can make electricity. They can make stress signaling compounds that are inflammatory, like inflammatory cytokines.
Yeah.
They can make sex hormones. They can make melatonin. And they can fold proteins to make you younger. So it turns out these guys are in charge because they do all of that before your brain gets the first signal that something happened. They have a third of a second to do their magic before your brain sees reality. That's called your response time.
Yeah.
Well, these little guys are way faster than you are. Think about it. You ever lean against a stove, like a hot stove, and then you just like pull your hand away and then go, thank goodness I pulled my hand away before it got burned?
Yeah.
Well, you didn't pull your hand away. Somebody else pulled your hand away and you took credit for it, right? There was no decision in you.
And if you think about it, your conscious thought about it wasn't until after you pulled your hand away.
Exactly. So how many other times throughout the day do you take credit for what your operating system does?
Right.
In fact, your operating system doesn't want you to know it's in there. It's called your ego. The ego keeps the meat in your body alive. It's kabillions of mitochondria all working as a distributed collective consciousness, deciding the state of your body. They think you're a petri dish and they think they're in charge. Yeah. And they're so fast and we're so slow that we really can't sense each other. They don't even see time. So what do? How do they make decisions? Well, the first thing that they do is, and there's 5 F words that run all life on the planet, because all life has mitochondria equivalents. In plants, they're slightly different, but same general principle. It is, number 1, fear. If something is afraid or scary, run away from, kill, or hide.
Yeah.
You do it right away. So if criticism feels scary and there's a fear signal because one time when you were 2 years old, you got criticized for something, your body will send you stress signals. It's just how it works, right? And then if it's not scary and you didn't get eaten by the tiger your body thought was going to eat you, then it's food. Eat everything because there might be a famine. Okay. And then the third F word that all life has to do is stay around forever. Can you guess that one?
The third. So wait, we've got fear, food, and
it's an F word and you have to do it for multiple generations.
You have to do it for family?
Yeah.
No, that can't be right.
Fear, food. What's the third one?
Well, I was going to say fucking, but I'm not sure.
I was going for fertility. I can't believe what a potty mouth. Oh, I'm offended, but not shocked.
Well, I procreation in some way, but I couldn't think of the
I
word.
totally did.
That's what came to mind.
I was baiting you. Most people would say that. Yes, fear, food, and fucking.
Well, I would say it.
Yeah.
Anyone who knows me knows.
This is, though, what your body does before you can think. The good news is I just explained that one time where you took a pizza and you put a cheesecake inside it, rolled it up, and ate the whole thing. Okay, that was food. And the time that you didn't ask for the raise or you procrastinated, right? And you're kicking yourself for it, that was fear. And that time that you went on the date that you know you shouldn't have gone on with the whole soccer team. No, I'm kidding. But like whatever, like there's things we do that we're like, maybe that wasn't a good decision. And then we beat ourselves up. No, this is your operating system just running the survival instructions for life. And it runs it so fast that it sends you things that feel so real. So the time you decide to eat the pizza, you're like, yes, this is what I really want, because it makes the pizza feel better than it is. And it does the same thing for all that stuff. It makes the scary things seem scarier. This is ancient bacteria running things for you. So the good news is, if those are the three, you can repattern yourself so that you're less afraid, so that you have just nourishment from food, because it's not a source of lack. You're not nutrient deficient anymore. And when it comes to intimacy, it's actually a source of nourishment as well. It's a source of longevity. It's where life comes from, right? And it can be junk food, or it can be, or junk sex, or it can not be junk sex, right? And then the one after that, where it gets really interesting, is friend. All life does this. Trees form a forest, sheep form a flock, and humans form tribes, and we support each other. We're wired in our bones. You have to think about it. We do that. We help other humans and other life on the planet. And finally, my favorite F word is forgive. That's the one that you do that turns off fear and hunger and loneliness. So that means that you evolve, and all life evolves. And the way humans evolve is by letting go of things we're afraid of.
So let me go back. I want to go back to fear real quick for a second. And then I want to ask you about everything you just said. So going back to fear, you mentioned like criticism, right? It gets you riled up. You can feel it, right? You get a little warm. Your brain goes a little bit to scrambled eggs. Like there's all, or you get offended, right? There's all these things that happen.
No, I'm feeling triggered. I'm just kidding.
Exactly. So, and whether it's because something happened to you or two, or you just, I don't know, someone sets you off, right? We've all been there in some way in our lives. But do you find that not only does it trigger you, but you turn something that isn't something you should fear into something you should fear because of your own baggage?
That's totally false.
Well, tell me more.
You are not turning something that you shouldn't fear into something you should fear. You believe that fear is a thought. This is the biggest learning, perhaps, of all the things I've ever learned when I was 30 years old, and I just started doing personal development. I'd left a very short and very traumatic marriage. I'd made and lost millions of dollars, and I was miserable. Like, money doesn't make you happy. Relationship doesn't make you happy. Being on magazine covers doesn't make you happy. I'm like, I'm at my wit's end. And a woman who was in her 80s, who led this retreat, I'm going to sound kind of lame here. I had never done any personal development work other than like reading a book on meditation. And I'm at this place. It's a 10-day retreat. And there's people this one day hitting pillows with baseball bats and like screaming, like, I don't know, stress therapy or rage therapy or something. And I'm just not into it. I'm like I'm a computer hacker. Like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but I couldn't stand the sound of them doing it. I don't know why. Actually, I do know why now. And so I said, I'm just going to go outside. And the leader came over, and she absolutely understood my stress responses because she was a master of her field. And she said, why don't you stay in the room? And I said, because I don't want to. And she said, well, what are you feeling? And I said, I'm feeling pissed off because this is done. And she said, okay, are you feeling anything else? I said, no. And she said, how about in your body? I said, there's a weird feeling in my stomach. She goes, yeah, that's called fear. And I looked at her, I said, there's nothing here to be afraid of. Why would I feel fear? And she literally laughed. She goes, fear's an emotion. It doesn't have to have a reason. Yeah. And that is a major unlocker of freedom for everyone. Look, you can feel afraid for a reason you don't remember, but the fear didn't happen in your brain. The fear happened in your body, because your body has to be able to sense that hot stove before you can think. So there was a time when you were 5 or when you were 10 or when a teacher criticized you, but there was a time where you felt unsafe when you didn't even have an adult brain in there. And the network of sensors in your body goes, label that one as scary. And every time that gets pushed, you will have a fear response. And then you'll have thoughts to justify the fear response. The thoughts didn't cause the fear response. They were the smoke that came off the fire.
Right.
And I can tell you how I know this. This isn't just theory.
Yeah.
11 years ago, I decided that I was going to have to start a neuroscience company to make meditation happen way faster, because I had a really busy career. I had 2 young kids, and a company called Bulletproof that was taking off. By the way, I'm totally out of Bulletproof. They're doing their own thing. Danger Coffee is my new coffee with minerals in it. Dangercoffee.com. There you go.
We're going to go get that after the show.
Nice. I'll send you some if we haven't already.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
So what's going on in my story? I got distracted because I wanted to drink coffee.
We never need a reason to drink coffee in my book, but you're talking about how you know this about the fear being.
So 11 years ago, I was working on starting Bulletproof. To say I was really busy. I've studied meditation with masters all over the world. Like I've gone to remote parts of Tibet, into the Andes and the jungle, and like I've done the work, and I'm so blessed to have just found some very knowledgeable people, much older than me, who've taught me things. But I started a neuroscience company, and I started bringing executives and entrepreneurs through. We have 4 patents in neuroscience. And what we do is we glue electrodes to your head. And over the course of 5 days, we measure your brainwaves, and we teach you how to go into the same states that advanced Zen meditators go into after 20 to 40 years of practicing every day.
Wow.
So I spent 5 days. I spent 6 months of my life with electrodes glued to my head, teaching my brain to not be triggered, not be afraid, to be focused, to be present, to be calm, to be peaceful. And there's still room to go. But what you learn from that kind of work, and working with more than 1,000 people in details, I have a team of facilitators, neuroscientists. It's a dedicated facility. Like this is, basically Professor Xavier's School for Brains, to the very best of my ability to create it. It's called 40 Years of Zen. And that's how I know what's going on with fear, because I get the most powerful people in the world to come in. I had a guy who lost $500 million in one day and lived to tell the tale. And he's sitting there in tears about his mom. And I don't name names for anyone unless they're public about it, because like it's people doing their stuff. But it's funny. If you want a brain upgrade, the first thing you do, the first 3 days, you get rid of fear. And then after you've reprogrammed your trigger response. So instead of being triggered, now you're like, I don't have a trigger. I don't have to manage a trigger that isn't there. Then we do the performance upgrades to increase the amount of electricity in your brain, to reconnect networks that need to be connected. And people describe it's like the best plant medicine ceremony ever, except without the plants, because you go into these altered states all by yourself. You don't have to use psychedelics. But at my biohacking conference that's happening at the end of May here in Dallas, I'm going to be announcing something new at 40 Years of Zen. We are adding in a new term in the field, ketamine-assisted neurofeedback. And we trademarked it, actually, CAN. And the reason is that if you use a legal substance like ketamine under a doctor's care, it increases neuroplasticity. It makes your brain like it was when you were 12 or 14. You can learn things so easily. Well, if you're learning how to remove your triggers and you make your brain all nice and soft so you can remodel it the way you want, and you spend 5 days just going as deep as you can, then you've got really, really big results. And everyone listening, in fact, I'll publish a book next year where I talk about the meditation techniques that are part of this. It's not just about having a computer hooked up to your head. It's about learning a specific technique to remove triggers with the computer watching you and telling you warmer, colder. Because most meditation, and I say this having sat for 10 days in Nepal and the sweating in a forest, eating a lot of peanut butter because it was like a vegan thing.
Like that makes sense.
People farted a lot. I'm just, it was.
I mean, I like peanut butter, but there's a limit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, that's all we're eating again. So, but when you're there, if you're meditating in the right way, and the monk who's watching or the lama really notices, right? That's good. And if your eyes are open or you have enough awareness to get the feedback signal, so maybe twice an hour, if you're lucky, he'll like raise an eyebrow at you, like, hey, you did good. The rest of the time, you're just hoping you did it right.
Yeah.
And if you have a really good lama, they're actually doing stuff that you don't know they're doing to move your field in the right direction. But that's kind of advanced spiritual stuff. So what if you have a computer 1,000 times a second, warmer, colder? It's just faster to go, oh, that's what it feels like to open your heart. That's what it feels like to forgive yourself. That's what it feels like to forgive the bully in second grade. And even when I say the word forgive, people get really offended. Like, I'm not going to forgive someone who harmed me. No, you don't tell them that you forgave them.
Right. It's not about them. That's the point.
Yeah. It's just you not being true. It's like you not caring. Like you're not hating, you're not loving, you're just flat. And you can love as the way you would love any human, any member of your species, but it's just never having to manage a negative emotion about that person again, because negative emotions take energy that you should be using to live a long time or to be with your kids or to meditate or just something fun.
Yeah. So you're blowing my mind a little bit, actually a lot. And I think you're just with what we just talked about in particular, going to change a lot of people's lives. And I just want to highlight it for a second to make sure that people don't miss it because it's so good. I think the narrative out there is how to manage your triggers. So take 3 breaths, 15 seconds, like manage your triggers is basically right. And what I'm hearing you say, which is like making my eyes go wide is, well, all that's doing is reinforcing a cycle that I'm stuck in of managing my triggers. So let's not get triggered instead.
It's better to manage your triggers than to allow your triggers to control your life.
Sure.
I mean, if my poster child for triggers controlling your life is a Greta Grundelberg, whatever her name is. How dare you? Like,
Van Thursen something.
Yeah, the Swedish girl. Well, now she's a young woman, but she, like, the idea is it's just pure rage. Like, that is not how to show up in the world. That's not how to fix the environment. That's not how to bring peace. It's not how to create a solution. It's chaotic. And I'll tell you a story about chaos that was part of this path that I think will be relevant and maybe amusing for you. When I was 30, I went to Wharton to get my MBA. Now, I almost failed out of my undergraduate degree, but I had a killer job in Silicon Valley where I ran strategy, or part of strategy anyway, for a $36 billion public company. So I'm like, okay, this guy has a great career. Like, he's doing good stuff. So they let me into Wharton to the executive program. And I'm starting to fail out of my classes. And I'm like, my brain will not work. I'm trying to focus. And I think I'm smart, but maybe I'm just dumb. I really was starting to question my reality. So I went to a psychiatrist to get a brain scan from a guy who's now a good friend, Dr. Daniel Amen, who wrote a book called Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, and a dozen other or so New York Times bestsellers. And I had a brain scan. I went into the psychiatrist and he looks at me and goes, oh, tech bro wants Adderall. I know this kind. And so he was skeptical, but I went and I got scanned. I came back and he just looks at me in the appointment and he said, Dave, inside your brain is total chaos. You have the best camouflage of anyone I've ever seen. I don't know how you're standing here in front of me right now. Because my brain had so much toxic mold damage, actual damage to my brain, that I could stand there and look normal, but inside was so much chaos.
Hot mess.
And if you look around and you feel like that might be you, whether it's from mold or just chaos in general, there's different types of behaviors in biology. Some species will, if an animal's sick, it'll just separate itself from the herd. Others hide it. And I say this, I also built a regenerative farm on Vancouver Island where I lived for the past 13 years until I moved to Austin. So I know sheep. If a sheep is sick, it'll hide it from the other sheep because it doesn't want to get kicked out of the flock. We are like sheep. We will not admit it that there's chaos going on. You will not be vulnerable around other people.
100%
right? So I promise you, if you look to your left and your right, there's probably someone who's just losing their mind right now, and they're just like biting their cheek, and they're not going to tell you.
Yeah.
And they can be powerful people. They're not, not everyone. One of the things that just comes to mind as I'm just sort of meandering through all this, when I raised capital for Bulletproof. So Bulletproof, when I was leading it, grew to about 140 million a year in revenue. It's a giant company that I started from scratch, and venture capitalists invested in it. And one of the guys who was my favorite board member ever, named Dan, he wrote a blog post the day that I raised that first $8 million that helped to grow the business. And he said, I met this weird guy, who was putting butter in his coffee, and it pissed me off. Like it offended me. But I tried what he talked about. And after 2 months, I went out and I sat in my BMW on Sand Hill Road at the end of the day, and I cried. Okay, number one, VCs don't cry. I don't think they have. I think to be a VC, you have to have your tear ducts removed, but he got past that. So anyway, and the reason he wrote this, and the reason he talked about that is because he said, my entire life since I was 18 years old, I've had crippling fatigue every single day, and I've never told a soul. He was another one like me who was like, I don't know, I'm going to make it through the day. And you just put your foot forward. He was a very successful venture capitalist, right? But he dealt with this, and you just walk it off. So it was that he had extra energy at the end of the day for his commute home. And I was the same way. I didn't have extra energy even during the day. And now I have so much energy. I don't even know what to do with it. Not like frenetic energy, just like good energy. Yeah.
So that has been a couple of thoughts. One is that has been my struggle for a long time, was energy. It's just, I was so tired. Like I was falling asleep at the dinner table.
Yeah.
And not because I don't think I was doing too much. Of course I had a lot to do, but I was just so exhausted for so long. In fact, butter coffee was the thing that actually started to turn it around for me, funny enough. So I heard you talk about it. I jumped on the bandwagon because I was like, well, I love butter and I love coffee, so I am willing to give this a shot.
You want to know why it worked?
Yeah, tell me. Because, honestly, I don't know. I didn't know. And I was like, I don't care. Whatever it is, it's magic for me.
Well, you and millions of other people.
Yeah.
So when I was on this journey, I went to remote parts of Tibet. And there's a mountain, it's the holiest mountain in the world, called Mount Kailash. And if you're Buddhist or Hindu, it's like you want to go there once in your life and walk a 26-mile circle around this mountain. There's no pavement, like it's icy cliffs, and like it's very, very rugged and remote. There's no infrastructure.
Yeah. And
I happened to get there after you're supposed to be there. So there's 8 people on this entire mountain walking a circle around it. It's 10 degrees below zero, 30-mile-an-hour winds. The only way of cooking is with burning yak dung. And so there's a few little guest houses open, and I'm feeling like I'm going to die because at 18,000 feet elevation, you kind of feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this little Tibetan woman brings me a bowl of yak butter tea. And I'm like, this is terrible, but I don't care. I'm so hungry. And I drank it and
felt amazing, right?
Like within just a minute or two, even.
Yeah.
Like it was like someone had turned the lights back on. And I just remember going, what is going on? I've been a vegan. I've been a devout raw vegan. I have tried keto. Like I've done everything. I've taken all the supplements. I had a huge bag of supplements with me that I was using to manage the arthritis in my knees and all this. And I couldn't believe it. So I came back to Silicon Valley and I said, I'm going to buy me some butter and some tea. And I did that. And it tasted like crap and it didn't work. And I was so disappointed. So I bought literally $1,000 worth of tea at a shop in Mountain View, California. And none of it worked. And I was so bummed. So then I thought about it. And so maybe it's the butter. And I bought 25 kinds of butter. And it turns out the 2 that were grass-fed were creating the effect. And the recipe that was originally for Bulletproof Coffee was for grass-fed butter and MCT oil, which is an extract of coconut. And what I do today, what I do today is I use Danger Coffee because it's lab tested to be mold free, and mold in coffee is a whole nother conversation. But I mentioned minerals earlier. You need trace minerals and they're missing from your diet. So when you drink Danger Coffee, we put more than 50 trace minerals at therapeutic doses in the coffee. You won't taste them, but when your body drinks coffee, like, why do I want more? Because electrolytes and trace minerals improve how you feel. And I think that's why people are really enjoying it. Plus, it's really good coffee. So I do Danger Coffee, and you can put butter and put MCT. But why does butter and coffee have magical powers? It has magical powers. In fact, there were 6 reasons I proposed in my first big book on that. But the one that holds the most water comes from research out of the University of Washington. I funded Gerald Pollack's research there, who's a relatively well-known in certain fields of biology. And he studies water chemistry. It turns out that for your cells to make energy, those mitochondria to make electricity or heat, they have to convert water, like water you find in a stream or water you drink from your sink. They have to convert it into biologically useful water called exclusion zone water. So what your body does is it takes water that you drink and it holds it up against your cell membranes, and then it makes body heat, and the body heat slowly transforms the water into another state. Now, if what I just said triggered you, okay, dude, triggered much? Some people get mad. You can see this under a microscope. It is not a made up thing. It's not, quantum woo. Yeah. This is hardcore cellular biology. And if you don't know about it, that's okay. But if you deny its existence, it's because you need a therapist. So anyway, what Dr. Pollack discovered was that both MCT oil and butter oil, or ghee, or the oil that's found in butter, create the largest exclusion zone in water. So what these high altitude Tibetans had figured out automatically without doing the science the way we do it today, they don't have enough food. Like these guys who were carrying the luggage, they eat a little bowl of barley, like ground up barley and some yak butter tea, and then they carry a sofa on their head all day long. These were superhumans. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And they don't get cold either. Well, one of the things they're doing is, why would I make my body make heat to transform the water? I'll just do it in the yak butter. So they would blend up their yak butter. And if they were rich, they had a blender. And if they were poor, they used an old-fashioned butter churn to make it. And then they would always blend it and they would always drink it. And it gave them energy without them having to waste electrons on heat. And it was the coolest thing ever. I did not understand it for 10 years after I felt it. But that's the thing. If you care about being well, who cares how it works?
Yeah.
Right. Most of the stories we have are wrong. Oh, you want to block Alzheimer's? It's caused by these tangles in the brain. Oh, no, it's not. Oh, depression, it's caused by a lack of serotonin. Oh, no, it's not. Oh, heart disease is caused by cholesterol in your food. Oh, no, it's not. By the way, even the American Heart Association said that last one. So we believe all sorts of nonsense, and maybe it's real, maybe it's not. The only thing that matters for biohackers is, does it work for me? Because it might work for your mom, but it doesn't work for you. And that's okay. It doesn't mean either of you is wrong. It means we're individuals. So I would recommend for everyone, don't do something that's supposed to work. Do something that's supposed to work while you track it. And then if it doesn't work, do the next most likely thing. That was what made me lose 100 pounds and just change my entire life. Problem is, it takes a long time. Right now, if you listen to every podcast I did, just my own interviews, and that's 1,200 of them, and you read 3,000 blog posts and 8 books, that's about a 2-year college degree worth of time. Since you're not going to do that, what I've been working on over the past, 2.5 years really, is an AI tool that will just tell you what to do to get the results you want. And different people want different results too. So it's like, who are you? What do you want most? And what is the cheapest and fastest path to get there with the least amount of suffering? And so I will be launching that tool. It's an AI-driven tool based on all of my work at the Biohacking Conference. So you can go there and be the first in, biohackingconference.com. But if you can't make it, you could go to iwillteachyoutobeyoung.com. And this is exactly, what lab test should I order right now? What data from my sleep monitor or my Apple Watch could I share? What's my goal? Did you want to be smarter? Did you want to be less stressed? Did you want to live longer? Did you want to be leaner? Did you want more muscles? All of those are possible, but maybe you have to pick one. Well, we'll help you pick the right one first, and spend the least possible amount of money and time to get there. And that's my big goals. How do I share everything?
Yeah.
Instead of sharing everything, I just want to share the one thing you needed to hear, and the rest of it you don't have to listen to.
Well, a couple of things in there. First of all, and we'll put the links to all this in our show notes when we put it on the podcast too, and down here. So of course, because I think this conference is going to be absolutely amazing. We got a question that said, "What's the first thing I can do to help get out of the 5F?" Would they say the 5F lifestyle? I'm going to say, first of all, drink danger coffee. That sounds like step number one if you drink coffee. But I'd love to hear your response on that. Yeah. And then I also while you're answering stuff, I wanted to ask you about, and it feels like what you were saying plays into this. You had said on your website that the world is set up for you to have a good life, but not a great life. And I just want to make sure to have you address that, because it feels like what you were just talking about with like this, you have to do this, or this causes this, or this causes that, is a little bit a part of that. So I muddled the things up. So one question, what do I do? Second question, good to great life.
Okay. So the first question, what do you do? And actually they were asking, what do you do as your first step to get out of the F word cycle?
Yeah.
Well, you will never get out of the F word cycle while you have a body. What you want to do is shift the energy so that it goes into the fertility or the recreational version of that. And it goes into friends and it goes into forgiveness.
Yeah.
So that means you want to reduce the energy that goes into fear and hunger. And of those two, it turns out that reducing the energy that goes into hunger is easiest. The average person, a third of your thoughts are about what you're going to eat at your next meal. Literally a third of your conscious.
I think mine are like 2/3.
Yeah. It's like tacos, pizza, tacos. So
where's my next meal?
You can totally turn that off. As an obese person, man, you have more thoughts about food because your cells are literally starving. And that doesn't make sense, but they're starving because they don't have nutrients. Their metabolism isn't working. So they're doing this for a reason. Usually it's toxins at this point too. So what I find is the easiest way to free up more energy so you can better manage things as you learn how to turn them off is to focus first on nutrition, because a lot of anxiety comes about from you ate food that suppressed energy, right? Or you ate food with toxins in it. So you start paying attention. How do I feel right after I finish eating? If you crave dessert at the end of a meal, it had MSG or something you're sensitive to in it. You shouldn't crave dessert. You should be like, it'd be nice to have dessert. And if an hour after a meal, you're really tired or you're craving another meal or you're still hungry, the last meal wasn't compatible with you. So your job is to learn how to eat so that you're not hungry all the time. And I didn't know what that felt like. I thought cravings were hunger because I had never had a day in my life that I was aware of where I didn't crave food until I learned how to eat. And all of a sudden, fear is a gentle thing. Like, it'd be a good idea to eat, but if I don't eat until tomorrow, I'll be okay. Right? Like it's a peaceful feeling, not a urgent feeling. Right. And since we're talking about biological feelings, this might be a little bit of a weird analogy, but stick with me. There's times where you're like, if I don't pee right now, I'm going to wet my pants, like urgent, have to pee. And there's times where like, somewhere in the next hour, if there's a rest stop, we should stop. That's the difference. Right. So if you have that urgency about food, something's off in your biology, and that's okay. Your next meal, here's what to do. Eat as much animal protein as you can, which is 30 or 50 grams. And you eat that first. And then you can eat some veggies and some carbs. And some veggies will cause food cravings. Things like spinach and kale and things high in oxalic acid will steal your minerals and actually cause inflammation throughout the body and kidney stones. So, and from there, you change things a lot if you avoid the seed oils like omega-6 fats like canola, corn, soybean, safflower, and focus on avocado, ideally whole avocados, or things like butter, because your cells and your hormones are made out of that kind of fat. They're not made out of soybean industrial extract.
Right. Yeah. So I really like what you said about focusing on the F's that work, right? That feed your soul. And you had this quote. I'm not going to go into the whole quote because we're almost out of time, but just about like there are 3 buckets. I'm just pulling it up that you spend your time in, right? One of them is drain energy. One is kind of necessary but uninteresting kind of thing.
Mm.
And another one was joy. And I loved that. I'm condensing it, but I love that
Yeah.
because I think in the F's, just to put them together, forgiveness, family, friends, my dogs, like those are the things that bring me joy. And they actually mitigate the other things. And I had never really thought of it that way.
Wow. This is something that I probably came from my book, Game Changers. After I interviewed 400 masters on the show, my show's called The Human Upgrade. I did that and I said, well, what do they agree on? I don't want to follow any one guru. I want to know what all of them agree on because that's where I'm most likely to get good results, right?
Yeah.
So that book was called Game Changers. And today it's the one that has the highest rating, the highest number of stars. Did I lose you? I think I did. Okay. Either my internet died or your internet died, but I'm going to keep going because I'm guessing it's still going. So I have no idea what I was talking about because we just lost our show. It says live. All right, guys. Well, since I'm not sure what's going on, we were talking something about F words or fear. So give me a second here and I'll figure out where I was. Not really sure, but we are at the end of the episode. Oh, there we go. You came back.
I don't know. That was so weird.
Could you hear me? You were totally gone. I was like, man,
no, I heard you. You were fine. I just somehow like went away for a moment. So
wow. Okay. So what did I miss? Like I didn't want to like end your show for you. I was kind of like, what did I do here? I wasn't afraid though, but I can tell you.
I don't know. You were there and then I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. But so we were talking about why it works and what to do right away. And then the other part of that question was, no, sorry.
Oh,
let me go back.
It was the Game Changer book.
I 3 levels. Yeah.
Okay. So in Game Changers, in that book, the highest number of ratings, they this is one of the rules that was in there, and it comes from my friend Dan Sullivan. I like to, whenever I can, point the finger at where research comes from. Dan Sullivan, for 40 years, has coached entrepreneurs, and he runs a company called Strategic Coach. So everyone has 3 buckets where you invest your time. There's stuff that you absolutely hate that sucks your energy. There's stuff that it's okay. It's neutral. It doesn't give you energy. You don't like it, but you can do it. And then there's stuff that just brings you joy. And if you were to sit down as you're watching this, get a sheet of paper and just make 3 columns, write down the stuff you hate, right? And then you go, oh, wow. And then the stuff that's okay. And then what percentage of your time do you spend on each of those? And then you can ask yourself, what percentage of time would you like to spend on each of those? And a lot of people will say, oh, I'd like to spend 10% of time on stuff I hate. I go, really? That's what you want to do? And they go, well, actually, no, I just thought I had to. And it's like, no, you don't have to. Those are the things where you ask for help, because for every one of those things, there's someone out there who loves doing that, and that brings them joy. Like accounting for me. Dude, I hate accounting. I have an MBA. I do not want to ever see another spreadsheet again, even though I ran strategy for big companies. I'm done, right? So I like to hire people to help me with spreadsheets, even though I could do it, right? And maybe for you, it's laundry. Like the number of entrepreneurs, especially women.
How did you know?
Like,
I freaking hate it.
Dude, if you're running a business and washing your own socks, like you're doing it wrong. Like outsource that first, right? And the amount of just peace that can bring you. So asking for help for the things you hate isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing, right? And
I was going to say, I really used to fall into that trap, and I still struggle with it today of like, well, but these are things I have to do. And I struggle with and Dave, I suspect you're like this too. I can do a lot of things well enough. So I can, in my head, justify, well, I'll edit the website real quick. That's faster than I don't like it, but I'm good enough. It's a horrible trap because it puts you in that sucks the energy out of you all the time.
One of the things that I'm doing recently that's brought me a lot of joy is I started a mentorship, like high-end mastermind group along with Naveen Jain, who's the CEO of Viome and a Forbes list 7-time successful entrepreneur, and Vishen Lakyani from Mind Valley, which is the largest personal development site online right now. And so the three of us coach a small group of entrepreneurs, and we get together a couple times a year and we have calls every couple of weeks, and like really intense. This is a problem for the people we mentor as well. Like everyone, we all do this as entrepreneurs. I could just do that. And like, why didn't you ever ask for help? It's like, because I thought I could just do that. So the way you grow a $100 million business, which each of the three of us has done, is by being lazy.
Yeah.
Right? Being lazy means you ask for help for the stuff that was extra hard for you. Yes, it's okay to ask for help. That was why in my 20s, I didn't have even more success as an entrepreneur, because I was too stubborn. I thought I had to do it all on my own. That's all programming. That's all fear, actually.
Yeah.
The fear is that if you don't do the work, no one will love you. And if no one loves you, then you get kicked out of the tribe and then the lions will eat you. It's not real, but that's what your cells believe. And they don't tell you that story. They just give you the sense of doom if you don't wash the socks.
Yeah. Right. And do the dishes and edit the website and fill in the blank.
Yeah, if you don't do the work, you're a bad girl, because that's what the coach said in 3rd grade.
Right.
Like don't be lazy. And so here's the deal. You can get the work done, but having someone help you is still getting the work done. And using a lawnmower instead of picking each little piece of grass all by itself, you could do it however you want to do it. Getting it done is the value. Working hard is not the value. Working smart is the value, because then you get a lot more done. And people get really angry at that. Well, you're supposed to struggle. Dude, no. And I can say there's 17,000 businesses in the US that do more than 100 million revenue. And I built one from scratch by asking for help and receiving help and practicing that and working on not being afraid and working on not being hungry and working on having intimacy and working on having friends and community and forgiveness. Like, that's how you do it.
Okay, we're out of time, which makes me deeply sad, because I would love to keep going. I feel like I have so many more. Like, I didn't even get to zombie cells. I wanted to ask you about those, so we might need to have you back. But
yeah, those are all in Washington, D.C. today.
Exactly.
Sorry,
we can have another conversation on that.
That was a dad joke. All right, thank you so much, Tamara.
Hey, thank you. And listen, just to everybody out there, first of all, go get Danger Coffee. Go check out the Biohacking Conference. Go check out Dave's book. Like I said, this was for me personally, a real gift, because as I told Dave, I have been following your work for so long, and it made a big impact. And, there's a lot of it that is with these hacks and these tools, and there's other things that are really lifestyle driven that we could actually all do really quickly, like the butter coffee. Like, that's actually very simple things that make a huge difference. So I appreciate it. Thank you. I learned a lot today about fear and triggers that I'm going to have to maybe reassess a little bit in my own life, how I'm doing things. So thank you.
Awesome. Mission accomplished. Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks for hosting the podcast for a few minutes there.
You got it. All right.
Thanks,
see you
Dave.
soon.
Okay, bye.